This is coming from the son of an Army soldier. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, Hickam Air Force Base if you want to be more specific. So I've been from Army base to Army base when I was younger. First with Fort Bragg, my earliest memories were of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And of course, the couple of years I spent while I was in elementary school in Germany. My dad was stationed there. He served during the First Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield. He was in the reserves afterward and retired afterwards and lived in the government. I lived most of my adolescent years, elementary school, middle school, and high school, near Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles. Now, if any of you know World War II history, that's the same 101st Airborne that served during World War II. Of course, the Band of Brothers, the 101st Easy Company. So I have nothing but the greatest honor and respect for those who wear the uniform. Now, I didn't get a chance to serve in the military, health reasons, and of course, I went to college. I have none but the greatest respect for the military, and I still dream old dreams of me serving in uniform. I have friends and family who have, or and still are, serving in the military, and I honor them all. There's a term out there that's been thrown out there for as long as I can remember. The term is stolen valor, which is, in simplest terms, people pretending to be members of the U.S. Armed Forces. People pretending to dress up as service members to get discounts from supermarkets or high praise from civilians. And I've watched, I don't know how many hours of YouTube footage of these people being found out. I've even seen former members and current members of the United States military confront these people. And I also seen how it led to fights. I'm not talking about good old-fashioned street fights. I'm talking about knockdown dragouts, especially from those who served in the Marine Corps or special units in the U.S. Army, the Rangers, Special Forces, whatever have you. So I take people who disrespect our military very seriously. But here's the thing that bothers me about this whole situation. Here's the point I'm trying to make. Vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party, for Donald Trump, I should say, JD Vance. This guy has made some very damning statements and claims against vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, Tim Walz. Now, here's some video of what he said.
Tim Walz, it's not even the positions that he's taken, though certainly he has been a far left radical. You know what really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform? When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out right before you actually have to go. I also think it's dishonest. Something, again, if you guys ever get an opportunity to ask Tim Walz or Kamala Harris some questions, he made this interesting comment that the Kamala Harris campaign put out there, and I bet they're regretting they put it out there now, because he said that and he was making a point about gun control, he said we shouldn't allow weapons that I used in war to be on America's streets. Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
Wow. All that. You seem to be outraged, Vance. But here's the thing about JD Vance that a lot of people don't know. Now, I've looked up this guy and his military service record. Now, after he graduated out of Middleton High School, which is actually not too far away from Cincinnati, in 2003, he enlisted in the Marine Corps and served as a military journalist. Well, hold on, wait a second. I want you to hear this very carefully. He served as a military journalist, not a combat role, in combat. Basically, he sat in a tent or in an air-conditioned room and wrote stories instead of serving in combat for 6 months in 2005. Now, he's completed his tour of service and made out in the Marine Corps as a corporal, just 2 stripes. Now, he was part of the public affairs section of the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing. Now, he says he told him how to live, told him how to be a man, and blah, 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 yak, yak, yak. But the one thing that Vance said that I think every one of us need to hear, the thing that he's accusing Tim Walz of saying, is that he was, quoting him, lucky to escape any real fighting. Let me say that again. He said, quoting him, that he was lucky to escape any real fighting. So you accuse Tim Walz of cowardice while you admit your cowardice. Now, don't get me wrong. I met a lot of Marines in my time. A member of my church enlisted in the Marine Corps a year or so ago. Marine Corps boot camp is no joke. Now, take out all the fictional depictions of it. Stop looking at Full Metal Jacket or other movies like that. I'm talking real life. It is no game. Anyone who attains the title of United States Marine has my utmost respect. But Marines are trained to learn to fight, regardless of whatever their MOS, their occupational, their job in the Marine Corps is. They're trained to fight and ready to fight. JD Vance just admitted that he was lucky to escape any real fighting. That doesn't sound like a Marine to me. That sounds like a coward in my eyes. But since Vance wants to bring Tim Walz into this situation, let's look at Tim Walz, shall we? This is coming from a CNN and Politics online article. Walz retired from the Army National Guard in May of 2005, according to the Minnesota National Guard. In a 2009 interview for the Library of Congress, Walz said he left the Guard to focus on full-time running for Congress, citing concerns about trying to serve at the same time and the Hatch Act, which limits political activities for federal employees. Correct me if I'm wrong, and feel free to do so, but isn't a United States Army soldier considered to be a federal employee? Moving on from the article, service members often submit their paperwork for retirement months before their retirement date. It's unclear when Walz submitted his paperwork for retirement. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes, but honestly, I know this from experience, watching police officers and soldiers submitting paperwork for retirement. It could take months, perhaps over a year, for a retirement to be processed. You just don't go willy-nilly, say, I quit, I'm retiring, and just walk out. It takes time. So after paperwork is submitted, they still serve. They're still doing their jobs. But I'm going to read you another article, and this is from the National Guard website. Guard unit recognized for record deployment. Now, this was written by Sergeant Mary Flynn of the National Guard Bureau. The House Representatives passed concurrent resolution on October 1st that commended soldiers from the 1st Brigade Combat Team, 34th Infantry Division. That's the unit that Tim Walz was actually assigned to as a Guard member, on completion of their record deployment to Iraq. The unit's 22-month deployment is the longest continuous deployment of any military unit during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. The 134th Brigade Combat Team received alert orders in July of 2005. They mobilized in September and trained throughout the fall before finally deploying of March of 2006. Originally set to return in February of 2007, the unit was extended 4 months as part of the president's surge strategy. That president, of course, being George W. Bush. And that surge strategy was a complete and total screw-up. Anyway, continuing on the article, U.S. Congressman Tim Walz of Minnesota authored the resolution along with U.S. representatives, and you see the whole list there, sponsored concurrent resolution 185 in the Senate, where it passed in July. Now pay strict attention to this next paragraph. Congressman Walz has a personal history with the Red Bulls, obviously the nickname of their unit, having retired in 2005 as Command Sergeant Major for the 125th Battalion of the 1st Brigade Combat Team. Quoting him, "I served along these soldiers for many years and could not be more proud of them. They endured their extended deployment with patience and determination, and their distinguished service record in Iraq speaks for itself. Today, every Minnesotan should be proud to call the Red Bulls our neighbors and friends," unquote. So let's look at that timeline, shall we? In May of 2005, Congressman Walz retired as a command sergeant major, one of the senior-most highest NCO ranks. In July of that year, months later, his unit received orders for deployment. In 2005, they started their training and trained all the way through the fall to March of 2006, where they were actually deployed. Congressman Walz wasn't even in the Army when they received their orders. So JD Vance, surprise, surprise, shock and awe, is a liar. A straight up liar. JD Vance served a few months as a pogue. Now that's military slang, being an acronym for person other than grunt. Now again, I have nothing but the respect for those who attain the title of U.S. Marine. But you weren't a combat Marine, and you admitted that you were lucky. You were lucky to escape any real fighting. So don't try to use the fact that you were a Marine, color the fact that you didn't see any action. And don't try to use the stolen Valor clause in order to make yourself look tough and make Tim Walz look like a coward. This guy served decades and made it all the way to Command Sergeant Major. One step away from being Sergeant Major of the U.S. Army, the highest enlisted rank in the U.S. Army. Vance, what are you doing? Seriously, I'm asking you a simple, basic question. What the hell are you doing? Are you really trying to take a page out of Donald Trump's book? When all else fails, lie about the other person? Because that's not going to work. It is seriously, honestly, not going to work. Because you have a presidential candidate that's falling apart at the seams. I mean, this moron tried to do a press conference yesterday, trying to make himself sound like a tough guy when he's really a coward, when we all know that he's terrified, trying to say Kamala Harris won't do a press conference, blah, 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 yak, 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 how he has the biggest crowds whenever he speaks, which are being dwarfed by Kamala Harris's crowds at her rallies, that the January 6th crowd was bigger than the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech crowd. That in itself that earns you a kick in the ass right there, Trump. But I'm going to refrain from saying so, although the fact is you deserve it. But for Vance, honestly, I wish to God I could say this to you. What I'm about to say to you right now, I wish I could say it to your eyeliner face right now. Quite honestly, I would like to say this in front of your face, your followers' faces, and especially your family's faces. The family you threw under the bus after you were announced that you were going to be Vice President of Donald Trump. After every right-wing nut job out there kept talking her down, even threatening her, calling her all kinds of names. And you didn't defend her. Because here are the straight up facts about you, Vance. You don't like Tim Walz. Fine. You don't like the fact that he's a running mate to a black woman. Fine. Just say so. But when you decide to question his service to our country in uniform, that's where I take offense to. You claim to be a United States Marine. You claim to love this country and everything it stands for. However, you let yourself become a whore for Donald Trump. You let yourself play by the book of Trump. When all else fails, insult the man. When policy doesn't work, insult the man. But you took it too far, in my view. Regardless if you agree with the man's politics or not, he served in the same armed forces as you. Not the same branch, but the same armed forces, and he took the same goddamn oath you took. Regardless if you agree with his politics or not, you are going to respect them for the oath he took. And it's become very obvious that you don't. You do not. You said yourself that you were lucky to escape any real fighting, which makes you a coward. You know what? It doesn't only make you a coward, it makes you a fucking disgrace. You're a disgrace to this country. You're a disgrace to the United States Marine Corps. You are a disgrace to the men and women, the real men and women who sacrifice everything for the defense of this country, and especially those who make the ultimate sacrifice for freedom and justice in this country. The same freedom and justice that you, JD Vance, and your master Donald Trump want to destroy. You are a fucking disgrace. And as I said earlier, I wish to God I could say this to your face, you son of a bitch. I have family members who served in this country, who served in this army. Some of them way back when they were calling us every name in the book because they were black. You dishonor them. So stop calling yourself a U.S. Marine or a former U.S. Marine because you never had the balls to be one. Yeah, you were a reporter. You were a combat correspondent sitting in some tent writing reports. But that doesn't make you a Marine. Most combat correspondents that I've talked to in years, they want to get into combat. They're scared out of their minds, but they want to do their duty when the time comes. If and when the time comes. You, on the other hand, saw the Marine Corps as, oh, look at me, I'm a Marine. That's disgraceful. And if I ever saw you face to face, I would tell you this, all of it, face to face. And yeah, I might get locked up. I might get sent in the pokey for a couple of days, maybe. But I'll do it with a smile on my motherfucking face if I embarrass you, your family, and especially Donald Trump. But then I have to remind myself, honestly, I have to remind myself that Donald Trump and the MAGA, they have no respect for our military. They never did. Trump goes off against veterans, saying, I don't want people who lost limbs near me. I don't want them near me. He down talks John McCain, not because of political policy. Now, I can go over his political policy so I'm blue in the face, but because he was a POW and he likes Donald Trump talking, he likes people that weren't captured. So I have to remind myself that JD Vance is playing from the Donald Trump playbook. Donald Trump said, why can't I? Vance, my advice to you Keep your motherfucking mouth shut when it comes to our military, because you don't care about them. And this little stolen valor bullshit of yours shows that you're a fucking idiot. And again, Vance, if you want to hear me say this to your face, let me know. I'm right here. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.